Okay, let's open Blender, delete everything and add a plane, and then let's add a box, and then let's align it to the ground, and then let's proportion the segments of the obelisk or the statue. We're going to model this in a segment. That means we're going to model the segments that repeat and then use an array modifier in the final stage. Let's use mirror modifier to repeat the half part of the object. This minimizes a lot of work. And then let's add some segments to the model, which means extruding and adding loop cuts. Let's add a cylinder to make it look like the segment on the statue. Shift D to duplicate and create segments. Since we have a mirror modifier here, we can only use the half part of it. So if you delete the half and then align it to the axis. Let's proportion the whole model again. Basically, every time we model something new, we're going to correct the proportion. So that's how proportional modeling is done. So modeling the elements also on the side elevations. And right about now it's almost looking like the statue, but the rear part also needs to be mirrored, so let's prepare those and mirror it also. Let's insert surfaces and extrude inward. Let's create the window parts and also the window parts to be extruded inward. Pressing E to extrude and pressing right click and subdivide to create the segments. Let's delete unwanted faces and let's jump to the next face, which is the front one. So basically every time we're doing on this one, the same thing is happening on the other side of the model, so it's making things a lot way easier. So doing the same thing also, insert, extrude inward, insert, and segment the faces. And what's unique about this one is that every time where there is a door, there's something that's called a monkey head that goes on top of the windows and doors, so don't forget to put that. Copying the elements for the left and right side. Scaling them according to the size of the window. Let's scale the front windows. I think they are a bit off. And subdividing the surface. Let's insert and extrude the faces just like on the statue. So since every door has that monkey head element, so don't forget to copy it to each door and window. So right here, since there is a mirror modifier, I should only keep the half part, and since the half part is already mirrored, so let's start using seeing in material. So let's add an HDRI, and then let's scale our floor, creating a new window and going to shader editor, and I'll put the link in the description for these textures. So let's use the bump, color map, and using node wrangler, press Ctrl T to add your mappings, and then add the rest of the texture maps. Next is the displacement. So attaching the node to the displacement and the image to the mid-level. So to control the color, let's add a hue saturation node. Dropping the saturation to 0, making it only black and white. So that's what we need. Let's add the roughness texture, and I think we're about done. Let's rename the material. Let's model the other parts of the statue. So duplicating the first one, that's useful because all the mirror modifiers are already applied there. So let's extrude it. Let's delete unnecessary face, copy the circular part, and I think this one is easy. Only the circular elements are crowded, I think. Let's add loop cuts to each segment. So since there is a door here, let's create a different plane to use as a door. Since this one is too segmented, so Shift A, plane. So since we are in edit mode, all the modifiers are still active. So let's scale the plane to match the door size. So extrude and add loop cuts and extrude. Add another loop cut and extrude and delete unwanted faces. Close the gap between the door and the statue. Let's extrude the faces that we have looked at it before. Let's go to material view and UV unwrap our surfaces, and I think it's coming good. There's one part of the statue where there are windows with 4 segments extruded inward. Modeling the monkey head again on every corner and subdividing the surface to create our windows, and selecting and extruding the wanted faces. I think we can copy each surface here and duplicate it to the rare one. And let's delete the surface behind it and move, and let's align the surfaces. Because of the mirror modifier, let's minimize the scale of the surfaces on the right side, and let's align all the surfaces. So doing the same thing, let's go to material preview and edit mode, select all, UV, smart UV unwrap, and let's copy one more time and delete these faces. Go to wireframe mode and delete vertices. So let's order each one. So the one with the door goes at the bottom, so let's put this one here. I think you can just copy this one and yeah, let's just extrude it and copy. Move. I'm just pressing Ctrl so it will snap to edges. So let's go to the top view and move. So I think there's some correction here. The rings should be 2, and let's add loop cuts and extrude outward. Let's set it offset even. So there we go. Let's adjust some settings to see the model better. So as we can see, the model is coming great. So let's copy another one and model the top elements. So let's select the top edges, extrude them, and move the edges located on the side to mimic the shape or the inverted C shape which we can see on the obelisk or the statue. I'm just going to wire mode to select the vertices that are located behind the vertices I can see, so that's one reason. And also try not to have too many edge loops, that will make the model a bit high. So let's try to make the top surface a bit organic and random to make it a bit stonish, I think. Let's separate the top surface and apply a subdivision modifier. And let's modify the shape a little bit. And extruding one more time to try to close the top surface, but I think yeah, can work. So let's align the surface, select, and now let's try another way. So let's just select edges and make it a bit closed on the top parts. So just holding shift to select multiple edges and just extruding along the x-axis. Let's see the material preview. As usual, UV unwrap. To close the top one, let's extrude the elements and edge loop. Let's add loop cuts wherever we need an edge which we need to bridge with. So I think one more we can add here, and let's connect. I think yeah, merge vertices. Press M and merge at last or middle. Let's move some vertices to the front so it can look a bit closed when seen from the front. So let's make the subdivision modifier visible and try to somehow carve the statue like it's handmade. Let's scale the upper part and somehow correct the middle one. Let's add loop cuts to create the middle faces which will be extruded out. So selecting the right faces, press E and extrude, and let's connect these faces. Let's adjust some geometries and add loop cuts to make the edges look a bit sharp. I think the edges here are a bit sharp, and also the bottom one. Subdividing the middle faces and moving the vertices to create somehow an illusion of displacement, and somehow tweak the geometries to make it look old and worn out. So we can do a little bit sculpting, but it's already enough. Let's unwrap the textures and array along the z-axis, and just add the count until we get the right height, and finally move the top one and align it to match the statue. So let's add our camera and adjust our view. Let's copy some segments of the statue and put it somewhere on the ground to make it look like some are somehow falling down on the ground. Rotate it whichever way you want. So the trick is to not make the open surface look or seen from the camera angle. And let's add another statue or stone elements which look like they are not finished or are also worn out. Let's add a subdivision modifier and subdivide the faces, and as we did the same way, move the vertices and somehow make the stone organic. Let's duplicate it adjust our camera, and let's crop the camera scene or camera view. Let's put a texture on the ground. And adjust some settings to make our renders a bit faster. And let's just make our background a solid color, and let's hit render. Well, let's save this as one, and let's change our camera angles. Let's go a bit closer, and let's hit render. I think I'm liking the results, so let's save this one as 2. Let's try some top view. Let's change the ground texture, the ground material, and add a bump node. Let's change our camera angle, and let's adjust our ground. Let's zoom out a little bit and rotate camera, and let's do the final render. Okay, cool. Let's save it.